Hello everyone, welcome back to Canimando. Today I'm analyzing another film trailer. This time it's gonna be Baby Boss 2. So let's go into it.
Work hard, play hard.
Okay, just the intro. There's a lot of things that I can talk about. Firstly, check the timing. So see how, for example here, when she straightens up the tie, see how it's fast, a fast movement, fast, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames where the spacing is very small, just so we have that ease into the pose. Look, then nice line of action, arm through arm. The body, see how as she pulls the tie forward, she leans backwards, so you have that contrast, that movement in opposite directions. And then boom, over a couple of frames, she releases the tie. So you have that snappy timing, so fast, slow, fast. And also notice how when she leans back, it's not just leaning back and that's it. You see the shaking on the head, so it's not just leaning back and a simple motion, but you have that little rotations on the head which add a lot of contrast, add a lot of texture to the animation. See, it's just a small shake on the head creating visual arcs with the nose. See how it's creating up and down, up and down. So if you drag the nose, it's always creating arcs, very small but always creating arcs. Then another thing that I really like, notice how before she throws it up, she shows it to the audience, so the audience now they see what she's gonna throw up, and then boom, she throws it to the air. So the audience is aware to what's gonna happen. It's not just pulling something from her back and then throwing it up, but she shows to the audience first that she has something in her hand and then throws it up. And then nice visual arc. See how boom, then they animate a fast transition going down, so you have that contrast, hang time, and boom, they accelerate the timing of it going down, so you have that contrast on timing. And then really nice, see how when it falls, she opens the mouth and boom, to the right. So that settle, instead of just settling here, they settle it, so moving to the right. So you create that visual arc, that nice visual arc. Boom. Also notice how she also rotates the head, so everything settles really nicely. Also check the visual line from the forehead to the mouth. So always we want to have that visual line from the forehead to the mouth. So see here, there's a straight line, then as she opens the mouth, you see that visual line created this way, and then as she turns the other way, you get the other line of action. So you don't have the nose pointing this way and the mouth this way. Always that you move the mouth one side or the other side, check that you are moving also the nose. So you are creating that connectiveness through the forehead until the mouth. See, really nice. And about him, what I wanted to point out, what I really liked is notice the anticipation here. So see how anticipates and anticipation up, a huge anticipation. For he's just gonna go into this pose, but he makes a huge anticipation which transmits more confidence. Huge anticipation and boom, and really nice settle. Notice how he gets into the pose, but he doesn't hit the pose and that's it. He hits the pose, and then see how the hips move down and then up, the hips move up, the body moves up, the head is still moving down, and then the head moves up and rotates back. So it's all overlapped really nicely. Really subtle, but just enough so it feels really fluid and nice. See, it's really subtle.
Work hard, play hard.
Out of my way! Ah! In days of yore, there were two warriors.
Here I really liked, there is a trick that they made here. So first of all, notice how there is the anticipation and a hold. They hold the anticipation for a couple of frames so the audience can perceive the anticipation. Notice how the hand stays pretty much on the same place with a very small slowing. The body keeps moving, so it doesn't freeze there to the pose, but the body keeps moving, the hand is there, and then boom, over one frame he makes his brother just insert his fingers in his eyes. And then what I wanted to point out is this. Notice how over one frame they actually stretch the arm a lot. So even though we don't feel, when we watch it, we don't feel like he's actually putting his hand inside his eyes. We don't only feel like he's just pushing his hand, but having that extra frame where his arm is completely stretched out makes the animation feel more powerful, because the audience is not gonna perceive just one frame. If you trick just one frame, if you cheat in just one frame, the audience is not gonna see it, but it's gonna feel it. So the impact feels a lot stronger and doesn't feel like he has his hand inside his eyes. So always you can use this trick to make your impacts more powerful in your animation. See, boom, and then recoil back, boom. Nice.
I'd kill for a spicy tuna roll right about now. Get yourself a little something.
Same here. Notice how when he goes to stretch his thigh, he has the anticipation down, so anticipation down, and then movement in opposite direction. He leans back, he pulls the thigh forward, and the same with the head. See how it has a little bit of shakiness to the head, so it adds texture to the animation. It's not just moving back, but a bit of shaking to the head adds that tension, that intensity to the movement. See, it's very small, much smaller than in the other example, but you can still feel it. Also notice how they made a double settle, so up and down and settle, then up and settle, then down again and up again. So they animated a double settle for this movement. See, it's really subtle, but it adds a bit more contrast to the animation.
For a spicy tuna roll right about now.
And great, so he's just like,
For a spicy tuna roll right about now.
he's talking really fast, so we see the mouth moving really fast.
For a spicy tuna roll.
So all this movement here is really intense, movement all the time, moving. There is movement all the time, and then boom, he throws the bills, the money onto his brother, and then holds the pose. So you have that contrast, that movement all the time, the mouth moving like crazy, and then boom, hold the pose for a couple of frames. So you have that contrast between movements.
Get yourself a little something.
The brothers grew apart, and a new age began. The Middle Age.
Dad, is Uncle Ted coming for Christmas this year?
Sweetie, sometimes you just...
I really like how he reacts here. So he just looking there, and then looks at her first. Notice how he looks at her, the eyebrows raise a little bit, and then see how the stretch, the small stretch on the head, the eyebrows raise, the mouth opens, and then a bit of a squash to the pose. So you have that contrast on the facials. It's not just getting into the next pose, but you have that extreme on the stretch and then recoil back to the next main pose.
Sweetie, sometimes you just grow apart.
Diamonds all in my ring, player. Gold watches, gold chain, player. Walk in the building, I own it.
Uncle Ted, I missed you so much.
I really like here how, notice how we can't see her legs, but we can definitely see the cadence of her walking or just like jumping. See how we can definitely feel her weight throughout this animation. So that's important. When you have a shot where you don't see the legs of the character, make sure that is somewhat realistic. Maybe you even want to animate the character on a way that you actually animate the feet and the legs properly. You don't have to polish the pops on the legs, but just animate them so they feel natural. So when you just record from the waist up, they actually still feel like the weight is there. Because if you cheat it and you don't really know what you're doing, most likely it's not gonna feel weighty enough.
I missed you so much.
That's my girl.
I really like this as well.
That's my.
Notice how there's a small overlap on the hand. So he pulls the money and then see how the overlap on the hand and then forwards. And I really like her reaction, because you can see how she's looking at him, then she looks at the money, boom, and then you have the squash before the reaction. So notice how the shoulders move up, the body moves up, the face rotates down and squashes. Notice how the eyebrows move down, the jaw moves up, so the whole body is squashing. So you have that squash pose for the anticipation of the reaction, and then boom, the reaction itself. And look at the reaction itself, how the eyebrows raise, the eyes open really much, a lot, the mouth opens, and then look at the shoulders go down, and they actually move the shoulders and the body moving down. So the neck here is stretching quite a lot. Realistically, you couldn't have that pose for many frames because it would feel weird. It would feel like her neck is completely stretched out. But they just do it for a couple of frames, so the audience feels it. They don't feel like her neck is stretching. They just feel the reaction. But it's just perfectly. Just if you do that for a couple of frames in your animation, most of the super stretched or super squashed pose, if you just held it there for 1 or 2 frames, the audience is not gonna see it. They're just gonna feel it. But it's gonna add your animation a lot of texture and a lot of contrast.
That's my.
See? It feels great.
That's my. That's my girl.
Woohoo!
You can't solve everything with money.
Oh, I really like this one.
You can't solve everything with money.
First thing, notice the pose. So in this pose, they want to animate like he has the hands over his face, like, oh my god, I'm like, I can't believe you're like that. So the hands are like that. But I like how they pose them, because if you had this hand over his face, it wouldn't be nice, because in animation we always want to see the faces of the characters. So they actually had this hand just peeking out from his face, so we can see 3 fingers, and the other hand they lower it a bit so we actually can see the mouth, the eyes. It's not covering the main features. So really nice pose there. So the emotion is felt perfectly, but it's not hiding any parts of the face that we want the audience to see. And another small detail, notice the shaking on the hands. small shaking, so we can perceive the tension. Whenever you have shaking of the face or the hands, you're gonna transmit tension in the animation. And also I really like how Solve, so he has the fingers spread out here, and then just before saying solve, there's an accent on solve. Solve, see, you can solve. So you want to accentuate the solve. See how they accentuate the solve with the face, really nice. So you can solve, but you want to also accentuate it with the hands, because the hands are just next to the face. So what they did here, just before solve, see how the fingers just recoil back, they just bring together the fingers just a little bit, so they have a bit of more of margin for the solve, for the fingers to spread out. So see how fingers come together and solve. So you can accentuate the solve with the hands as well. So this is a little trick. That's a little trick. Whenever you have an extreme pose and then you wanna hit an accent, you can just couple of frames before, a few frames before, just reduce the pose extreme, so it's not on the extreme pose, reduce it, and so in the accent you have more room for the accent to be shown in all the parts of the body.
You can't solve everything with money.
Then love the accent on money as he closes the fingers. See, it's actually overlapped, so one hand starts and then the other one follows. The fingers overlapped, all the fingers, really nice hand pose. Notice how the arc is created on the fingers, so you have beautiful hand poses. Same here. See how the shaking on the hands transmit a lot of tension, and see how they actually here bend the fingers a little bit, so straighten and bend a little bit, so they transmit like he wants to hold, he wants to grab, like, oh my god, I can't believe what you're doing. So there's many ways. See how the fingers just curl a little bit to transmit like he's trying to, oh, he can't believe what he's saying. So really nice.
You haven't changed at all. You're still a big baby. Suck it, Ted. You suck. Get that plastic out of my face.
Excuse me. I hate to interrupt. I mean, it's a riveting conversation, but why don't you both suck it?
And here I really like how, notice how both of them are frozen.
It's a riveting conversation.
But notice how there's just a tiny bit of movement here. There's just a tiny bit of movement, just enough so they are not completely frozen. Notice how the eyes just move a tiny bit. So even though it's really exaggerated, normally you don't want to freeze the characters like that, but even though if you want to exaggerate it a lot, many times if you just have the eyes just move a little bit, it will be enough for the audience to feel like they are not completely frozen.
But why don't you both suck it?
Really like this one. Bah. So she jumps up, she's looking at them, and then boom, spins out and the legs hit them. So boom, really nice. And notice how one frame where he gets it into the mouth and boom, you feel the inertia. So boom, and same here, boom, one frame in the mouth and boom, you feel the inertia. So one frame, boom, great. And then the slowing, see the slowing couple of frames where the head is still moving with a very small spacing. So one big spacing and slow into the pose, and then recoil back and settle. And then when she falls down, notice how they stretch the pose here for the contact pose, so you have that really nice straight line, so you have that contrast, boom, so you feel the falling really fast, boom, and then settle. So settle. See the head, how the head is stretched and then squashed and back. So down and up. So you have that small settle. Really nice line of action through the arms. Really nice. So yeah, many things going in here.
She can talk. All right.
I'm in the family business, and now you work for me, boomers. Baby Corp developed a new formula.
Really, I really like here, same as well. See how he's falling with a really nice pose, line of action, silhouette. We can see the feet, the hands, really nice line of action. See how the arm is just like lining up with the head in this occasion. So we get that really nice silhouette. And then boom, he falls and settle. So you have the squash of the fall and then settle up. And getting that, see, boom, really nice line of action. Then when she falls, boom, same as well, a nice settle. See, the arms move up as a settle and then the head, boom, arms and head. So you have that settle and then him just slamming against the floor, boom. Really nice.
Baby Corp developed a new formula that can turn a grown-up back into a baby in 48 hours.
You want me to be a baby again?
I really like this here. Notice how even though the pose,
Baby again?
this pose could be quite symmetrical, but notice how there's differences. Notice how in this line there's more of a curve. This has more angles to it, even though they are quite in the same height, but there's differences in the arms and also in the movements. Notice how
You want me to be a baby?
Notice how this hand starts rotating first.
Me to be a baby?
You want me to be a baby?
Me to be a baby?
A baby? You want me to be a baby? So a little accent. So they rotate the hand just when he accentuates a baby. So using the accents for the movements.
Me to be a baby again?
And then again, see how this hand started rotating and then the other hand leads the next movement. And then boom, so you have that overlap in the movements. And then see, it's up and so you have that down and up. So you have that settle on the arms. They are not just straightening up and hitting the post, but you have that down and up. So you have that settle, that arc, that visual arc created. So down and up. Really nice arc. And here I wanted to point out how, look how important is the point of attention. Look how important it is for you to know where the audience attention is. Because in this example, we have this shot first. So this shot goes first in the trailer. So he just drank it. And look at the mustache. He actually drank it first, but because the point of attention is in this character, we actually, when we go to this shot, he's without the mustache and he has the short hair. So he actually, this shot goes first in the film. But because it's the trailer and the point of attention is here, they actually shift the order of the shots for whatever reason. But because the point of attention is in this character here, and then in this character here, we don't actually see it that much. The audience is not gonna feel like, oh, that was weird, that was out of order. They're just gonna watch it and completely normal for them.
There's the awkward stage. Ew! Baby Corp will offer a full memory wipe following this experience.
So, what's the crisis?
An evil genius is teaching kids to be very bad babies.
Well,
Really like this one. Notice the arcs here. So arc, see the arc on the nose. If you track the nose, it's creating visual arcs all the time. And also the overlap. Notice the overlap on the hands. So one hand, then lifts the other, then the other one, and then hits first with the other, with this one, and then the other one, and then the head. So you have that wave-like motion on the arms, on the body. So lift one, lift the other one, hit with one, hit with the other one, and then the head. So even though you have 2 poses, 3 poses, all the parts of the body getting to the poses are overlapped.
Welcome to the baby.
Bad babies.
Welcome to the baby evolution.
We're gonna need a disguise to go undercover.
Really great this. But I really like the inertia when he just spins. Notice how the inertia is animated really well. We don't feel like we are missing inertia or anything. It's just really well animated. Always in your animations, make sure that the inertia of the gravity or the inertia of the movements, whatever you're animating, make sure that is felt properly. It doesn't feel like the character is suddenly stopping or hitting a wall, like an invisible wall, or like suddenly speeds out without a reason. That the inertia slows in or the inertia accelerates according to each and every movement. I really like this one. Ta-da-da-da. Ting, 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 ting.
What have you done to me?
Really cartoony this here. So boom, so he hits this first, then moves back, spins out. So you have that, then that anticipation pose, held pose for a couple of frames, and then he goes to step again, and boom, over one frame he slams against the floor. So that's really cartoony, they're really exaggerated. It's not like that throughout the whole film, but you can see how sometimes you can really exaggerate the movements to make a more cartoony, more appealing, create more contrast in the animation. Boom.
No, really? What, are we going sailing? Oh no.
Also, I really like here, notice how he doesn't have a face here, he doesn't have eyes, because he put the suit the other way around, but because he doesn't have eyes, notice how they used the rotations of the body to transmit where is he looking at. So he's just like searching for something, and then he's looking at one way, looking the other one, and then, oh, I found it. So he looks outside like, oh, that's the way, but he can't actually see anything. So that's a good lesson for if you're animating a character that doesn't have face. You can use the rotations of the head or rotations of the body if it doesn't have a head to transmit where is his attention, where is he looking at.
Going sailing?
And really like this pose. Notice how in this pose they actually put the feet pointing inwards, and the elbows as well pointing inwards. So they transmit like he's not completely comfortable in this outfit. He's not completely comfortable. He's like, oh my god, like he's not completely confident. So the same way when you have open arms, like straight, where the stretch pose, when you have the straighten up, like everything pointing outwards is gonna transmit more confidence. If everything is pointing inwards, it's gonna transmit more like shyness, or like he's not completely comfortable in that moment.
Sailing? Oh no.
Really like this as well. Notice the jump and boom, they exaggerate, so you have a bit more of hang time in this animation. Boom, and then they speed up the movement down when he falls and slides. So boom, boom. It's a bit exaggerated. It's not realistic, obviously, because it's animation, but it's really well animated. It doesn't feel weird. It doesn't feel odd. And why it feels fine? Why even though they create a bit more of a hang time, it works, because if you see when he jumps, even though he hangs there for one frame extra or 2 frames extra, maybe 1 frame extra, notice how the body keeps moving forward. It's not like the hang time, the body freezes in the air, but he keeps moving forward and then moves down, but the body keeps moving forward, so it's not frozen in the air. And boom.
Thanks for always having my back.
You're my brother. We always stick together because that's what families do.
We need to hurry before the formula wears off. What the? Aren't you a cutie in that little karate outfit?
I really like this. Notice how the sliding is really fluid, really, like the spacing is really even. But notice how the legs go like crazy, like he's trying to change direction. And notice in the jump, because they want the jump and the fall to be really snappy, but if they actually animated it that fast, it would feel like pops. So you have 2 ways of doing that. With a stretch, like here, you can stretch the body, stretch the head, so the movement feels more, because if see how the jaw stays more or less on the same, moves very little, so but the top head moves quite a lot. So with the stretch you get that movement, a lot of movement, but without the feeling of the pop, because the part, the extreme part, is just moving very little, as you can see. But here they wanted to animate even bigger, so see how they use the technique that just creates 2 heads. For example, in this case, you can animate like when you have a very fast movement with the arm or the legs, you can duplicate any part of the body, and then you have that movement really fast. Boom. So the movement doesn't feel like a pop, because if you just have 1 frame to animate here, if you just go from this pose to this pose, maybe it's gonna feel like a pop. So they just duplicate the face. So see how from here to here the eyes move very little, but the head is actually moving a lot. So but you just have 1 frame to animate, so you duplicate the head, so you animate like you had 2 frames. The brain, the audience is gonna feel like they saw 2 frames, but you actually just using 1 frame, so you get a faster movement. And same here, see, boom. So we don't feel like a pop because the top of the head is still on the same place, but the body is actually quite down, so you get that nice transition without feeling like a pop.
I'm sure this isn't something money can't.
I really like here because even though it's very snappy, notice how they use all, like it's all coherent, all the movements are coherent. So for example, he steps really nice, the weight is put on these feet, and then the anticipation, so he anticipates to this side before lifting this foot, so it's coherent. The weight has to transfer to this part of the body so he can lift this foot. Nice, really nice line of action. Then he steps really fast, and this is all snappy, but the relationships between all the parts of the body stay coherent, stay realistic. They exaggerate the timing, they exaggerate the spacing, but the relationships, they are there. And then boom, really nice line of action through the arms.
Can't solve. Money. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh! I'm Sure this isn't something money can't solve. Sure this isn't something money can't. Sure this isn't something money.
And see also the settle. So down and up. So they don't just hit the pose, but they animate the down and up. So a small settle on the body.
Can't solve.
And I really like his reaction, because again the squash and stretch. So boom, squash. Notice how the face squashes, the knees move up, the head moves down, the torso squashes. So you have that squash anticipation before the reaction, and then boom, the stretch. The legs straighten, the torso straightens as well, the head moves up. So you have that contrast between squash anticipation and reaction. And then the settle. So for the settle, the legs move back down, and then the head moves down a bit. So you have that anticipation squash, reaction stretch, and settle a little bit back.
I'm sure this isn't something money can't solve. What? Can't
See?
solve. Can't solve. Can't solve. Solve. What the fudge?
Great. Well, that was the trailer for Baby Boss 2. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned a lot. If you want to learn more about animation, I have a course in Udemy, so check the description. Also, I have a Patreon if you want feedback on your work, if you want extra help, so check it out as well. Leave it in the comments if you want any other trailer or animation to be analyzed, and until the next animation analysis.